Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing. I am your host, Lauren Gray, and what an interesting since last week it's been. Uh, we are in the throes of something very unique and very different, as we say, as things happen to. Now, this goes beyond the geopolitical landscape right now and financial impacts of what's happening because of it, which we can actually add into our conversations and so forth. But I wouldn't say quietly, but without a lot of fanfare. An announcement of progression from Google this past week has really brought awareness to something as to how fundamental this change could actually be, at least in the scope of near term. Long term, I think it'll have a residual impact as profound as well, but there's still things yet to change. So it may not be as definitive as it appears now in its change. What am I talking about? I'm off on these ramblings. Let me talk to you that the topic today is that Google has figured out how to thread the needle. Now, that's an old colloquialism that's talking about the ability to accurately pass between very challenging things, much like when you thread a needle. You have the eyelet of the needle and, straightening the thread to put it through. Skill of accuracy. It has long been pondered as to how Google would be able to not diminish its financial relationship with OTAs and in advertisement payment sense. It's a huge revenue stream for Google for hospitality. OTA spend, as we know, billions of dollars, large, which is why we do so much with them, is because they're the ones that are vanguarding so much of the marketing penetration of upper funnel awareness, discovery, wishful, thinking phase of it all with customers and guests, well ahead of what we were willing to spend money on, which is more defined audiences that are looking in particular to our destination, or even better for the uniqueness of then trying to have them convert to our single product at a time when they're making decisions at that level. But OTAs have always been in the upper ranges. We know that as a necessary evil, in order to be in that space of consideration, we work with OTAs, allowing them to be the vanguard, and hope that we can figure and work a way to have the guests discover us directly, even though they had really followed through the funnel with the OTAs, at a point of where do they purchase our product from? The OTA that has brought them there, or us stepping in and saying, hey, you should do it with us, even though, because they're selling us, you should do it with us. There's more value to that, and we can offer more things to this. Now, from our side of it, of course, we know direct channel. Having book directly with us saves us a large amount of costs associated with commissions that the OTAs require us to pay for. Now, how does this all work as to what I'm talking about with Google? Google has been, as we know, everybody has been in the progressive growth of AI and how AI gets used. And there's been AI browsers, Comet, Atlas, so forth and so on, where they can create these agentic functionalities that persistently follow through. Similar to what we used to do with apps. So we would go in and say, hey, monitor these rates for me, or monitor these inventories for me. And it would flag you and tell you, hey, the thing you told me to look at, it's something you should look at. Well, agentics, the ability for specific tasks to be made from an AI function, has been progressively growing. And we are seeing more and more of this in the market as things go on. We've seen plenty of people now that are trying to offer services for us at hotels and resorts that operate like this on our own website. The condition, we've talked about this in 2 shows back in five. Oh, by the way, this is show 555, by the way. Sorry. In 553, we talked about how we have to be mindful that they can turn into their own OTAs, because they're going to pull all of our content, our assets, and use it as us on our sites. And should we dissolve that relationship, they still can continue to do that without our direct benefit anymore, because they basically have everything they need to continue on selling us like an OTA. That's what OTAs do to us. They have all of our information and information beyond what we have about our surrounding areas, and they leverage that with the guest discovery process. So, sounds like I'm rambling a little bit loud, because it is exciting, scary, and fascinating how just brilliant minds figured out how all this can work without it being a detriment to them. As I said before, Google has figured out that they don't have to diminish or cut off their OTA financial stream by saying, okay, we're just going to handle everything. No longer are we going to have OTAs be the gateway for these things. We're going to handle all the facilitation of going to hotels. And a lot of resistance of that happening from the outside was that, well, that would be a financial disaster for them. Similar akin to trying to turn off cookies and realizing it was going to damage their monetization so much that they backpedaled from it and now no longer getting rid of cookies. Same mentality. They may be aggressive towards diminishing OTA's presence on it, allowing for expanded capabilities by doing their own ads and so forth, Google Hotel ads. And that also had the effect that they can't take too much from the hand that feeds them. So here OTAs are spending these billions of dollars to make sure that they are ever present in our market to sell our product. We're spending money to represent ourselves in contrast to also the OTAs. They have a whole meta search program, which is here's all of the hotels that you're looking for, or all the places you can buy from the hotel that you're looking for. We occupy that space along with the OTAs, or you should anyway. And here comes along generative AI and its search queries, where we're asking things, and rather than giving a list of options, we're given specific data. We ask a question. Now, as we educate ourselves on how to use AI and how AI is educating on how we use it, that relationship dynamic is persistently changing. And we're getting better at trying to understand what AI can do for us. At first, it was more reporting of awareness of data. It solidified content, not in a optional categorization of what it thinks you want, what people are paying for you to see, and what organically represents what you're asking for. It now is about accumulating the data to solving and or creating the answer that fulfills what you're asking of it. So we've gone from what are some things to do in Cincinnati to what are some things to do in Cincinnati with a family of 4, 2 children, 1, 5, 1, 7, for March 1st through the 18th or whatever. And it then will look, allowing it to go out into the internet access at the time, and look at events that are going on that are related to the categories of the ages that you described and the interesting things that you've said and so forth. And that's already happening. These mini agents, these micro agents, are able to facilitate this. And they're getting better and better at it. And when I say micro agents, I'm talking about, you're looking at the large chat GPTs, the Perplexities, the Claudes, the Llamas, all of those platforms, Gemini, Copilot, okay, Gemini being Google, Copilot being Microsoft, have had this functionality and they're getting better and better and better with this. If you keep up with what Google's doing in their Google Labs and so forth, they've been progressively defining specific capabilities, specific tool functionalities. We talked about Google LLM, Google Notebook LLM, last week and the week before, actually, both, as being a wonderful, viable tool to put content in specifically for functions you wanted to work with AI. Well, in that same labs category has been AI mode. And AI mode is to not just report on what's discovered in a context of an answer. It's instead to facilitate the conclusion or the process of that answer. I'll take this as a direct way of putting this. So say, for instance, I were to go to Gemini, Copilot, on the other platforms, and ask, hey, I'm looking for a weekend getaway in Fort Myers Beach, tropical theme hotel, beachfront view, March 20th to the 24th for 2 people, preferably a king bed. What's available? What you'll get is a specific answer with some variations, like, well, there's also this hotel or that, but they're going to give you a particular one. And they're going to give you the historical information that is available, because Google has that. If you look at Google My Business and so forth, you have that guide as to what rates are historically been at the hotel for different dates. And it has that as a reference of data. It can say the average price for the kind of room you're looking for is somewhere between 160 to 220 or 350 to 450, whatever it is. It helped answer to you. You understand that these are hotels to consider, or a hotel in secondary one. You have a proximity as to the rates and so forth. But now you have the ability where it will say, unfortunately, there is no rooms available. How did that know that? Because Google's HPA ads, in order for them to work, Google Hotel ads, have to be tethered to your POS, your online booking engine, your capability of inventory. It has to be highly accurate and highly fast. So it has to know whether there's rooms available and so forth. And it's now able to go over and look and see that from the dates you've picked, even though this is the place you probably want, there's no rooms available. But it doesn't say that initially. It basically says that this is what it is, so forth and so on. I said, well, great, can I book the rooms for that? No, unfortunately, it looks like there's no rooms available. That's a huge step forward that it actually can do that. Other than that, it'll tell you, can I send you direct information? And it still does that. It'll still say, hey, I can send you the link, or here's the link to, calling them up and seeing if there's availability and so forth. It's now telling you that it's actually looked and saw. Well, it's gone even farther in this AI mode. And that's the big announcement. Big lead in, here's the announcement. It now can continue to progress the relationship of what you're doing. So it won't do the transaction for you. It'll facilitate your ability to do the transaction. What do I mean by that? You go through the process I just said and say, well, hey, are there, then there's rooms available. Well, what's the rate for a king room beachfront? So they have beachfront. Well, it has these rooms available on these dates. The rate, it ranges from 160 to 220. Okay. What's the 160? And it'll tell you then it's a king room, non-beachfront, available for the dates you've chosen. Is there any discounts or price adjustments to it? Well, there is a AAA rate that is applicable for 10%, or no, there's no parent rate, but it'll tell you that. And then you can go over and say, or make it do this. Not everybody can get this done yet. It's actually, we'll get to that in just a second, but it will be able to facilitate well, I like to book it. Great, I'll send you the link to do that. And what it will do is produce to you the deep link to the place of all your conversation, up to showing the dates that you selected, the inventory type that you selected, for you to then proceed from that link to finish your transaction. It brought you to the doorstep, so to speak. Why is this so impactful? Because Google has been able to thread the needle. It doesn't take away from OTA's spending right now as to wanting to be ever present in how people discover options and considerations and so forth. But what it does do is it makes Google a utility that bypasses the usage of the OTA to get you to the same point. Now, on the OTA, same thing. It'll bring you right to it, and you have to, on this platform, conclude the transaction via them, and then that the OTA, of course, contacts its API feed to the hotel and books the room for you. Google's providing the same utility function. It's bringing you to, but it's bringing you to the direct channel, your website's channel, with all of the relevant content related to it already in place. So now you simply have to conclude the transaction should you want to do that. It prevents anybody's first pushback saying, well, I don't want to allow an AI to control my financial choices and pitch, because you're not. It's only bringing you to the point where you can then do your own authorization and creation for it. That's very powerful in that's own right. But the ability to say that this generative AI, this ever-growing volume of traffic to our sites, this ever-growing usage of these micro-agents and everything, looking for and trying to discover the choices and options of travel, okay, are now capable of bringing the user to the point of transaction without outside resource influence. Or not, I wouldn't say influence, that's not even a good word for it. Outside function necessity. So OTAs aren't in that whole string conversation. You went to Gemini. You described what you're looking for. Gemini came back with an answer for you. You then pursued that answer down to the point of a transaction. You went through and made the transaction. The only things that happened was your engagement with Gemini, Google, as a utility functioning this. The OTA was not in it. Let's just leave it at that. So now you get a direct connect capability from the discovery of generative. And this is, Google did it now. You can imagine ChatGPT also, to be fair, ChatGPT has been doing the same thing too, AI mode. It's a generic term for what they're doing. They have their own name flavor for it. But they're also providing this capability by having to tap to, but they don't have the connectivity right now that Google has. Google, because of the Google Hotel ads, and for them to work with third parties, to operate this ability to have the cached inventory to be able to discover the inventory availability, so forth and so on. They need to have that as well, so that chat can go look and they can quote scrape the data. They can go mock a reservation, see that it's available, see that the rates are available, and so forth. But they don't have it set up the way Google has it set up with the Google Hotel Ads. But their functionality is the same, in the sense that the user will be able to go all the way down to the point of transactional decision, ZMOD, without outside influences or outside contributions or connections or functions. Okay. And this alleviates the need of competing with OTA in an advertising space. Instead, you need to make sure that you're geared up to be able to facilitate this functionality in generative AI. Now, here's the scary good part. Marriott's already doing this with Google. That's the announcement from a week ago. Marriott is already working with AI mode, so that as you look for hotels, in the Gemini's response will be much like metasearch data is. Matter of fact, it's exactly like metasearch data. Here is the hotel, and here is the rate offering for the dates that you're asking about, for the inventory that you're asking about, for the specials that you're asking about, the packages you're asking about, all the things that you need to have awareness of. They're taking the feed that Google uses for Google Hotel Ads and using it in the Gemini results specific, so that in it, you can actually click through it to finish the transaction. That's what Marriott is currently being able to do with Google. Now, is it a locked and only them? No, it's just them first. The ability to do this is available. You have to get fast, and you have to get connected, and you have to be able to do this correctly, because there's a lot to doing it before a third party offers to do it. I'm hoping that this helps Marriott's mid-tier hotels a lot. Regrettably, I think given the economy of the K economy metrics right now, that'll probably be the most underutilized aspect of it, because most people that are still traveling at will are financially secure enough that they're not looking for that tier level relationship hotels. They're looking for value, upper scale relationships. So I don't think that's going to be a direct first impact value unless you really highlight your capability. And that in itself, and this bears a whole nother conversation another time, but a quick fractional idea of this is that with this now ability to go through generative AI discovery, your ability to make sure you're ever present in generative AI discovery functionality, what you show up for, how well you show up for, your content relevance to the destination market interest that the generative AI uses to discover and then put you into the results of an answer, is even more crucially important, because you can literally grab back a lion's share of traffic to your site by doing good with this, by making these connection capabilities happen. It's a bit of a buzz. I have the pleasure of being on different industry conversations and board discussions and so forth. And this has just been a pop-up conversation everywhere right now of, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about it being done like this? I see it as remarkable that Google didn't take away from the revenue stream right now, didn't cut it off, cut the hand off that fed them, so to speak, with the OTA's advertising spends. By the same token, they didn't poo-poo on the direct channels by saying that they're only going to lean this towards OTAs. Because OTAs are trying to build their own infrastructure that does exactly this. Go to Expedia, go to Hotels.com, and use their entire platform for discovery, functionality, conversion. Don't go outside of their ecosystem is what they really need, because we've talked about this as a challenge, and this goes back actually a few months back into the latter part of 2025, where we talked about how OTAs are now challenged with these generative browsers, because the browser can create a functionality that emulates what OTAs do. They can go out and find and research and accumulate and put together all these cool things, much like what OTAs do for cultivating their content, to do for the user experience once you get into their ecosystem. And I said that it was a very strong threat for OTAs, because now you have browsers that are capable of creating customized discovery for a user, in contrast to them having to use the OTAs to go through the same process in general terms. The customization of the individual interest was the key feature to that. The slow progression of it, and it's not slow, it's just a learning curve really, is that people have to understand how to frame what they're asking about in a way that produces the most valuable, relevant results from the usage of the platforms. You have to ask the right question to get the good answers. And that's a learning curve for everybody, myself included, as you get better. And the technology changes. So even as you feel like you've gotten better with saying it a certain way, um, that changes the need for that way of saying it. And it progresses where you don't need to say it the same way. It implies the fact, based on the history of your searches, that you already know that these criteria are a part of your request. You don't have to reiterate them. You don't have to emulate who they're supposed to act like to discover what it is you're asking about. Back in the days where you had to say to an AI, as a marketing professional, da 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 da. You don't have to do that kind of stuff anymore. What you do have to do is be very succinct about what it is that you're trying to craft, and parse it in such a way that you don't overwhelm the variables by asking it to do too much of a long tail discovery where it has too many choices to make, and one wrong choice patterns off the answer wrong. It's better to parse it smallly. It's kind of like making a video where you do each scene in context, and then you put the scenes together from what you made. Same too with using generative. Right now, it's still in the, I want this piece to do this, I want this piece to do this, I want this piece to do this piece to do this. It's getting better now where you're able to long tail more of that dialogue together so that you can have the family of 4, this is the age of the kids, this is what we're interested in doing, this is what we're interested in doing it, these are the dates we're interested in, these are the things we want to make sure of, so forth. If you haven't started using generative AI to discover your travel options, please do. It's fun, even just out of the interest of just discovering how and what. I would recommend an inversion of what I usually recommend. I always tell people, if they want to know how to market themselves, go try to market a hotel in a market they've never been in, to understand how hard it is to be discovered in a market that you don't know what you're looking for. I say this inversionly. Now, to discover how AI discovers you, pick the market you're most familiar with and ask questions and see if it gives you the answers you know are right or wrong. That's literally how AI is being taught right now. Meta search is in a huge quantity right now. Not Meta search, excuse me. Meta is in a huge quantity right now, because the Meta glasses were catching images from the discoveries of stuff being reviewed by human review that shouldn't have caught some of the stuff it caught. Meaning all AI uses humans to teach it how well it did. There's been a few articles in the Wall Street Journal and so forth about lawyers and finance and doctors and so forth that are getting paid very well to literally watch what AI says about what's asked of it, and then their human perception saying, well, that's good, no, that's inaccurate, and it teaches AI to be better with better responses in the future. There's a whole host of humans around the world right now teaching AI how to be better at what it does. That's what's happening. And what you should do in the same emulation is research your own market, research yourself, and see how accurate AI is representing not just your market, but you, and what you see as gap points where, well, you're not able to find out that the best restaurant for such and such is right there, and there's no way to discover that via the AI unless you actually know to ask about it. How can we change that? You put it in content on your website, and then you use that content in reference to why you find it so valuable. So now AI can then go find it. That's how you solve the process of AI generation. Well, the same with what we're talking about with what Google is doing with Marriott and what Google is doing in general with AI mode, okay, is as a utility, as a pass-through, it's saying, okay, if you're looking for these things, you can tell me about all that you're looking for, what the criteria of what you're looking for. I'm going to go find all this stuff. But now I also have the ability to actually be very specific about what I discover, to the point that I can bring you to the transaction of it, where it's like, yes, I found a Marriott that is perfect by the airport, and it has the shuttle service, and it's the rate that you said that you're interested in, it's in that range. Blah blah blah. Here, here's the rate and the ability to book. Here's the link. Go click. Ba-dink, da-dink. There you go in, and you're able to make the transaction. And OTA wasn't a part of that process. OTA didn't have a hand in it. Outside resources didn't have it. Third parties, affiliates didn't have hands in it. It really drove your user, your guest, your future guest, directly to your doorstep through generative AI, and gave them the ability to make the transaction with you without having to listen to everybody else to do it. So all of those people that are standing in front of your door trying to sell the option of coming in your door, they don't get to see these people. These people come in a whole separate door that they can book directly with you. That's the big impact of this, I feel, is that the problem right now is nobody else knows how to do this per se. or is doing it well. And I say nobody else in the sense of anybody less than large brand level right now. Marriott, of course, as we just said, made the announcement they're doing this Google. You know, the Hiltons and the IHGs and what have you are going to be, and actually are, in that whole process. So what you're going to see is this whole surgence of brand capability in generative AI that are going to allow you to go directly to the option of conversion with the user without outside influences of OTAs or anything else. And it's going to be hard to compete as a competing hotel with them, because if we're not showing up as good as them or better than them for the generative AI, the schema that we're using is not as robust, the content is not as usable, all the things we keep talking about with SEO's necessity right now, then we're going to miss the opportunity to be in that conversation. And Marriott and Hilton and IHG are going to be there, and they're going to go right down to, and here's the link to book. And that makes it very convenient and easy. You can do this, but you have to go through the process that Google has mandated. I'm sure Microsoft's going to be coming up with its version variation. Actually, it already has. It's being adapted to what it already had been doing, its own hotel sales capability. You're going to see other platforms, generative platforms, long language models do the same. You're going to see a version of it in Perplexity. You're going to see a version of it in Claude. You're going to see these things coming through where people use. We already know ChatGPT has theirs. The concerning issue of all of those is they do not have the connected capability of the inventory, and that's the key element of the success of it. The ability to know that the inventory is available at what prices for what dates. That's a connection, an API connection that is tethered to the property. So they're going to start opening up doors and saying, hey, allow us to connect to you, and we can now do this happen on our platform. You're going to see a lot of that, hopefully very soon, where they're going to be like, well, we don't want Google to be too far ahead of us. We need this. Google's already far ahead because they've already been running Google hotel ads. They already have the connection. Plus, they've also been capable of pulling inventory and rates from places that they don't have the direct connection to by, lack of a better way, scraping, where they can go look and observe what the rates and dates are and so forth. But now you're going to have more of a controllable function to it. So very, very cool stuff. Very, very much in the mainstream of what is potentially going to be huge impacts for us. Nicely that I didn't have to talk about current geopolitical finance. We all know what's going on. So skipping a beat on that, we're not going to be talking about gas prices and airline flights and prices and TSA delays and everything else that's creating huge hampering effects. I will say this, though. I find it amazing. The desire for optimism is always high, especially when it comes to finance. And right now, people are very excited about the fact that the start of the year was exceptionally strong. And surprisingly so for me. I thought it was great that it did what it did, given what I thought was impending circumstances and so forth. But all these numbers that everyone is working and touting on right now are booked to be prior to the events that are happening right now. And prior to gas variation prices, prior to fuel flight variation prices, prior to geopolitical changes and so forth. And so all of the benefit that we're receiving through spring break right now, all the business that we're getting right now, all happened before it's happened now. That people are still going to take the trip that they had bought. People are still going to go through the aggravation of TSA because of it. People are still driving because they had plans for it. They're not going to not take the trip because of an extra $50 or something or $100 in gas. As painful as it is, they'll spend money less elsewhere, sadly. Maybe our restaurants. Maybe they're looking for a better hotel deal and we lost and got a cancellation because there's a lower rate somewhere. And as much as they didn't want to stay there, it's still cheaper. We'll see more of an impact of that when we start reviewing March, April numbers and May numbers as to pace and pickup. So there's this, we're at a flip of that right now. So we're about to see that, and again, could be wrong. It could be that it doesn't affect it in a certain way because we are still dealing with the K economy and the people that have the means to be able to spend will continue to do so. We'll yet to see. But this whole process of Google right now, threading the needle, for what they've been able to do. Kudos to them for being as willing as they were with it. But secondly, the impact of this is profound. It changes the dynamics between us and OTA relationships, in addition to how we need to feature our capabilities to make sure we're showing up in generative AI well. And we need to get our game together on making those connected out capabilities. So there we have it. Not our longest show, but our definitely one of our impassioned ones. So thank you, as always, for those watching us live around the world. We broadcast in 209 countries. We're on the Hospitality TV channel. We're in the Hospitality Radio. If you're hospitality marketer, you can join us at hospitalitymarketing.club. Thank you for all of our associations and corporate relationships that broadcast our show live on their Facebook pages, their YouTube channels, and of course we're on LinkedIn, which is on mine because they only allow one profile to broadcast. And if you catch us on Twitch, then thank you so much for that as well. With all of that, my name is Loren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time and look forward to talking to you all next week.